Welcome to a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms new dawn of day. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're on pan. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Run, run, Rudolph. Getting the hell away. I don't know the song, so I'm making my own lyrics up. Welcome to number 50 of Legacy News. No king but Christ, baby. Because we're about to dive deep into something you retards think is inevitable. Maybe it is. Maybe it's good versus evil. Maybe we're at a crossroads. I don't know. Welcome. I am the legacy of Jennifer Int Kaiser. I'm Zach Kaiser. I'm your captain to that train that's actually going to run over myself before it gets suplexed. And this is Andrew Joseph.
What are you, crazy? You watching 51 of these?
Hey, anybody that watches 50 episodes of the Legacy News are okay retards in my book, but you're still not taking my trophy.
Oh, there's more people to compete against? Man, I'm in a bad position.
Exactly. You need a monopoly. Competition is not good for you.
I need a kingdom.
You need a kingdom. What kind of kingdom is that?
Kingdom come, baby. It's time to go. Deep State episode.
Speaking of the deep state, before we jump into the video that I have for us to watch today, what is your definition of the deep state? What does the deep state mean to you? Is there a deep state, or is it just the state?
Well, my definition of deep state is this, is that when there's one monetary supply, you can have people manage parts of the world and you can cooperate behind the scenes. That's the deep state to me.
Woodrow Wilson's greatest visionary experience of a great administrator. Basically, you just sit at a desk all day and sign papers while everybody else does all the work. I think that's what he referred to it. A great administrator.
The great administrative state, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, baby.
And who can we think? Who can we thank for this overreaching global administrative state?
Not the global homos, that's for sure.
Well, to your perspective, who do you think? All joking aside, they are all global homos, but all joking aside, who do you think is deserves the thankfulness of our great overstretched empire of administrative bureaucracy?
Well, it depends on who you want to go through. Well, let's say it's either the people that were involved with the Titanic or the International Monetary Fund, or maybe I repeat myself.
Let's not go to the Titanic. Cool, that's great. There were several people that coincidentally were opposed to the Federal Reserve. You can't you can't distinguish on if a ship is going to hit an iceberg.
I don't know. Weirder things have happened.
Coincidence happen. I mean, coincidences are coincidences. It obviously it was favorable, sure, certainly, but coincidences are coincidences. There's no irony in this. It is odd though.
Yeah.
But
3 points marks a trend. The rivers have merged.
but
That's what
I'm asking who do you think is
just told
the
you.
catalyst
International
towards
Monetary
a global
Fund. It's a framework.
that came the International Monetary Fund came
Yeah,
after
but I
World War
mean,
One.
it was pitched. It was delivered. It failed, so they pivoted and they keep pitching and failing and pivoting.
You're failing
And
to
it's just
ascertain
constant.
what I'm trying to ask here.
I
That's
know
my okay, sure.
why that a group of people are responsible for this, and I'm not on that page.
It goes back through an expanse of history. This is a fight that's been going on for who entrenches themselves as the top dog of human society in all of history. Empires have always been there. I mean, one could say that the greatest administrative state to ever breach the lands of the world, the landscape of the world, would be that of the Romans. They were the most successful. And I mean, they lasted till 1453, if you really want to go that far with the Byzantine, what we refer to as the Byzantine Empire now in the East. Some could say that the church was very administrative, and that when the Western Empire fell, Rome did not, as the Catholic Church took a hold of what was missing through the
Salvage.
structures. They salvaged exactly. They salvaged what had been originally lost through the political structures. I mean, it's no. I mean, the Pope actually takes the title of what is it? Prefect. Did I say that word right? But the Pope takes
Wow.
titles that were once reserved to that of Caesar in Rome. One could go all the way back as well, but empire is empire, and the most notable capture and allure of power that has been successful is when you have a gang of bureaucrats with the one leader that's kind of the last say all.
It is a weird coincidence.
Should we get back? Should we get into the video, Andrew?
See, I'm just trying to make him go dancing mad.
Goodbye, Alex Jones. Your controlled opposition. Let's get to the video, everybody.
The term deep state is almost a little tired because it was so conspiratorial for so long, but it's a really like effective term for it. Deep politics, deep state, the unelected government, whatever you want to call it. I think now every American left and right has had enough examples of that affecting their side and their issues.
So recently, Ian Carroll went on the Digital Social Hour podcast to talk about the deep state, what that truly means, and why a lot of
Right from the start, it's been the term deep state is almost a little tired of that affecting their side and their issues.
So recently, Ian Carroll went on the Digital Social Hour podcast to talk about the deep
technology infrastructure is not an accident. It was grown out of money by money. From Google to Apple to Microsoft is a great example with Bill Gates. Holy shit, that dude. Straight up to our social media too. So
the CIA has a lot more power than people think.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, I use the CIA as kind of the catch-all term for all intelligence agencies, because for the average person, they don't know like all the other names of like all 35, whatever. I don't even know how many intelligence agencies we have, and I bet we have ones we aren't told about. I don't know, but I just say the CIA is in our intelligence state, whether it's NSA or DOD or CIA or whatever it is. And a lot of it is CIA, a lot of it is FBI, you know. And a lot of it, I think that they wouldn't even be able to identify exactly who is who, because that's the whole point, is that it's very gray area so that it can kind of get covered up and swept under the rug. I mean, a lot of it is done by non-government organizations like USAID, this whole USAID scandal, specifically so that when something gets found out, it's like, oh, that was just some private company making decisions on their own. Like we didn't, it's like, oh, Facebook was censoring you, until Facebook shows the records that show that actually the government was pressuring us, which should not exempt Facebook from liability for censoring Americans over facts.
Right.
But
this is a really interesting point. I think he's totally right here. My conception of the U.S. deep state has always been the unelected bureaucracy that exists. But I think Ian correctly notes that private and governmental bureaucracies to do things that would be illegal if it was just the government wasn't involved in it. Stuff that happened with, like the COVID, but it turns out that government
also passes blame on to the government that pressured them to do so.
So crazy. I remember when deep state was a conspiracy theory.
I know, right? And
5 years ago.
The term deep state is almost a little tired because it was so conspiratorial for so long, but it's a really like effective term for it. Deep politics, deep state, the unelected government, whatever you want to call it. I think now every American left and right has had enough examples of that affecting their side and their issues that I hope that Americans en masse are waking up to the fact that it's not lefts versus rights. Like that's two wings of the same bird, and both are manipulated. And there's this growing center mass of center left and center right libertarians and rational liberals that all understand that, like, yeah, we disagree on policies, but we are all on the exact same team of we're all on the bottom and outside of this club.
Yeah.
Trying to
Israel. That is all.
Free our country from these monetary influences, and our enemy is these people on top. Like, and I'm not saying our enemy is rich people. Like, we need rich people on our team. Our enemy is corrupt people, right? People that are getting rich and fat on this corrupt deep state system.
Yeah.
That is what we need to take on. So
Yeah, certainly so. The classic dichotomy between left and right becomes more muddled every day, especially when you had people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. essentially join the Trump administration, both of which come from the left. But really, the whole political kind of dichotomy that I think dissidents, anti-war activists, libertarians look at is one between liberty and tyranny. And the cultural war issues that divide us are tangible. They do, have some semblance of, importance to a lot of people, even including myself. But that is the wedge that is driven to divide us against things that Americans would generally be against. Americans were very against, even on the left and the right, the Occupy movement and the Tea Party movement were very against the TARP bailouts that happened after the 2007, 2008 economic collapse. But shortly after those kind of movements formed up, you saw the use that these woke terminology and injecting kind of the woke culture battle into the sphere of journalism just explode. You can do a LexisNexis search and find out that, words associated with those things grew in popularity immensely. Racism, sexism, trans, gender ideology really exploded after that point. And I think it was intentional. It was to drive wedges between people that otherwise would align. And I think Ian is right here.
I wonder if there's a fix for this, because I'd imagine if it's happening here, it's happening almost every government, right?
Absolutely. And that was the point I was trying to make on Rogan, is that like Israel is just as vulnerable to this as every other country. Sudan is just as vulnerable as every other country. I mean, some countries are certainly more vulnerable, like the more impoverished, the more corrupt, the more histories of power struggles. Certainly you're more vulnerable to it, but like we don't live in a nationalist world anymore. Like the moment that you had steam engines and ships sailing across the world, we were globalized, and that's been going on for hundreds of years. And at this point, this whole oligarchical class of billionaires, of corporate executives, of intelligence operatives, all of those things are operating on a international scale. They are not tied to any one nation. And I think that's why there's so much pushback against nationalism, and they try to smear nationalism as like, oh, so you're a Nazi? It's like, no, that is a completely different thing. Nationalism is pride in America in this sense, or if you were French, it'd be pride in France. And there's nothing wrong with that, because if you don't have nationalism, you have one homogenous soup of people that have no cultural differences, that have no, like, diversity is only our strength if we keep it diverse.
Right.
And you only keep it diverse if you keep that culture to being that culture and that culture being that culture. And like, yeah, we should mingle and we should be friends, but we want British nationalism. We want American nationalism. We want like Lebanese nationalism. And as long as it's not violent, and sometimes it super is,
Yeah.
but as long as it's not violent, and as long as it's not, harming others, it's like the golden rule applies to individuals and the golden rule applies to nations. And hopefully we are starting to wake up to the fact that like, we just need to be calling out the violence. We need to be calling out the extremists, because often we're learning those extremists are actually fucking plants put there by the deep state. Like often, whether it's a political protest that there's feds inside of trying to instigate violence to discredit that movement, get people arrested, or whether it's entire countries like Ukraine where there's an entire opposition party being funded and then they coup the country in 2014 in the Maidan Revolution. That's funded by the CIA. We funded that overthrow. Same with Bashar al-Assad in Syria right now. It's just breaking that Syria is just like totally just Muslim extremism, murdering Christians in the streets. And Candace Owens, like last year, said, hey, if we overthrow Bashar al-Assad, he's not great, but he's been protecting the religious diversity in this country. And if we overthrow him, we are going to see Christians massacred in the streets. And lo and behold, now we are seeing Christians massacred brutally in the streets.
That's exactly what's happened in Syria. He's also totally right about Ukraine. If people aren't aware, I think a lot of my viewers are, but in 2014, USAID funded demonstrations that ended up resulting in a coup against the elected government of Ukraine. The State Department was certainly involved in this. There's a leaked call between Victoria Nuland and the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Piet, at the time, discussing who had to be part of this new government. So there's definite U.S. involvement in this, funded by USAID, and it's impossible to be denied. I think Ian also makes some points in regard to nationalism versus globalism. It's not exactly a stunning revelation to realize that the oligarchs in America would have more in common with the oligarchs in other parts of the world, including Europe, than they do with American citizens. The globalist impulses are big, and that's just demonstrated by organizations like the WEF and the causes that they put forward. So I'm not as big of an enthusiast about nationalism, I guess, in general as a concept as Ian is, but in the context when it's nationalism as opposed to globalism, that's what I prefer. But my ideal is, nationalism to the lowest possible unit, all the way down to the individual, where your community is much more important than your state, and your state is much more important than the federal government, and the federal government is more important than a global government.
Crap. And that coup was on behalf of us and Israel, the Western nations' interests in overthrowing that strong leader that was holding that country down. And now it's back into chaos again.
Wow. So all of this is just orchestrated.
I mean, yeah, I don't mean to imply that there's like 6 shadowy dudes around a table with the Illuminati sign in the center. That is not at all what I'm implying. But it is orchestrated in the sense that, like, imagine all the giant piles of money that these various groups and people have. Like Bill Gates has his pile of money, the World Economic Forum and their friends have their piles of money, BlackRock has their pile of money, all these different people. And there's governments involved in that too. And all those piles of money represent massive amounts of leverage and influence. And most of them tend to align on most things. Like most of them do not want a strong, educated, intelligent American populace.
Right.
Because it doesn't benefit any of them. Most of them do not want healthy young Americans that are fit and capable and having strong marriages and strong families, because that doesn't benefit any of them. It's like, so on a lot of these issues that feel like some grand conspiracy, you don't need a grand conspiracy because incentives are all aligned. Every one of them makes money if we're all fat and sick and depressed, whether it's because they're selling us drugs or it's because they're selling us advertising or it's because they just need us to stay the fuck out of their political process so they can run their show the way they want.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's just interest alignment. Like the world is 8 billion people. So there's 8 billion different people at the table that are influencing the world. But most of us are just regular people that only have one person's worth of influence. And then you get the Bill Gateses of this world that represent like billions of dollars worth of interest, who's like, I'm going to vaccinate all of Africa with these experimental drugs that just so happen to sterilize millions of people against their consent. Or I'm going to test out remdesivir in Africa, and it killed remdesivir, the COVID drug that he pushed on us. It killed more than 50% of the people in the trials.
Holy crap.
It's crazy, dude. The story of remdesivir's trials in 2019, I'm pretty sure it was, maybe 2018. It's crazy what happened in the remdesivir trials in Africa. And I'm pretty sure they were testing it on Ebola, trying to see if it would help for Ebola.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that they had to shut the trials down after a couple months because it was just clearly killing people. And then it became our wonder drug for COVID because they could make a shitload of money off of it. And because it was a treatment after you're so sick you're in the hospital rather than a preventative that would stop them from having their emergency use authorization. And that information is all sourced and cited in RFK's book, The Real Anthony Fauci. Everyone should read that book.
That is.
Yeah, Ian's right here. A lot of the distant world, and I've kind of, fallen into this at sometimes too, believes that kind of everything that happens that's kind of tyranny or an imposition of coercion or schemes to rob us of our liberty or wealth are part of like a grand conspiracy where there's a boardroom and people kind of discuss it. But I think Ian's right here when he says oftentimes it results just from a happenstance that transpires because of alignment of interests and alignment of incentives that occur that encourage these people to do this without, with kind of a wink and a nod rather than kind of a grand conspiracy to do that. That's not to say that that doesn't happen. It certainly happens, especially when it comes to, launching wars and, the COVID response and stuff. We've certainly seen that. But a lot of it is more or less organic based upon incentives and power structures that revolve around those incentives.
Nice. Yeah, I know he's buying up farmland. He's trying to do fake meat companies.
Yeah, Bill Gates is a madman. And I more and more suspect that it is not just like him being naive and just doing billionaire things. I more and more suspect that it is some sort of, I hesitate to say agenda, but kind of an agenda.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what it is, but it's fucking evil. It's not good.
Well, this was an interesting video. I think Ian is kind of on the money when it comes to the deep state.
There is a boardroom. It meets every year in May. They've been meeting since 1954. A group of individuals that are the heads of large corporations, banks, politicians, unelected and elected, royalty, you name it. But the boards of their own companies and governments alike meeting every year in May for about 3 or 4 days since 1954. We don't know exactly what goes on behind those closed doors because it is relatively secret, but we can definitely gander out the theories behind what they might be discussing because we see it in real time if you pay attention after their meeting, and that's called the Bilderberg Group.
Yep.
So
It's not a conspiracy at all.
You also
No,
have the
it's Steve.
trilateral. Yeah, you also have the Trilateral Commission that was actually forged as a secondary annual board by David Rockefeller himself. You have the Council on Foreign Relations, which has a lot to do with our foreign policy in this country and in the West, and why we probably have gone to war in the Middle East for the past 20 years has a lot more to do with the Council on Foreign Relations, more so than the CIA. But to say that there's a deep state encroached within the United States, I fail to ascertain that it's a deep state within the United States when it is a global phenomena of many different peoples in the realm of different business and political organizations.
Well, I mean, they talk about having spies that go in Japan, right? That's just a big spy spot, apparently. So why wouldn't they have, just plain clothes people show up, deliver, plans, and then move on to the next target?
Mm. Another thing about the CIA, and it's kind of interesting on how the CIA was formed and passed in 1947.
The
First
Office
off,
of Strategic Services.
that was somewhat of a predecessor, but I'm talking the way that it got passed is very similar in fashion to how the Federal Reserve Act in this country was passed in 1913. You had a long-winded recess that ended up calling for a legislative process. I believe in the cold holiday season of December, and this is the Federal Reserve. That's the
Legacy
legacy.
Vash. This is a good
Yeah.
book. We started to read this when we
Yeah.
first started doing the podcast.
Yeah,
We might
but
wanna look it over
but
later.
the CIA and the Federal Reserve kind of correspond greatly with how their establishments were and the facet of how they were passed. You didn't have a full room of a legislative session in Congress. The authority of the CIA goes directly to the President of the United States. Congress has nothing to do with the CIA. I don't care what their intelligence committee, their little political charade takes. The CIA does not report to Congress. The same with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve does not report to Congress, which in effect is also unconstitutional because it is Congress that is, by constitutional law, by article of Constitution, the one that the branch of government that controls how money appropriations are fixed. And so the Congress is who articulates how money moves effectively, and how taxes are issued and how currency mechanisms are made. It's the Congress that has that power. But
Blue pill
in terms of
position.
what a blue pill position, exactly. But that's where the CIA lies. Is the CIA is absent of Congress. Congress has no authority of the CIA. They could call anybody they want for a hearing under oath and hold their little investigation for their little political theater charade, but the CIA doesn't have to say anything because they don't report to Congress. They report directly to the president.
It's always been theater ever since the beginning. Just look at that Michael Malice tweet he sent out the other day.
And as you see, as the ticker goes, I said the world builders go deep. The CIA has a lot of its influence with Operation Paperclip. It's no secret that after Operation Paperclip came the foundations of expanding a civilian spy network, even though they're really not intelligence, they're more saboteurs, of Frank Wisner. in 1947 with the CIA's creation. And the Nazis won, everybody. They are the world builders. I mean, as much as you want to say nationalization and you're a Nazi, the Nazis were very much global, but on a perfect race.
Inverse scale.
So, but and that's the reason why they needed to get rid of Hitler. It's why there were so many. How many assassination attempts did Hitler have on his life that failed?
Oh man, I don't know the exact number, but too many.
Way too many, and there's a reason for that, because they realized they can't beat the Allies. They
If
need
you
to
can't beat them,
negotiate.
join them.
Exactly. Or in this case, the Allies utilizing the Nazis, and forcing a capitulation and partnership for which maybe the Nazis were always in collaboration with the Allies.
Just remember, there were bankers that were funding both sides of the war.
Yes.
That's not a commentary on any particular religion or accusation against. That's just a fact.
That's why we always say here on the Legacy Right, or Legacy News rather, the Germans lost the world wars. The Nazis at the end of World War II won, because the Nazis were shuffled between two powers to influence and infiltrate, and then you got the great civil war of statism, capitalism versus communism.
It's a civil war, that's for sure. Cold civil war.
It is a cold civil war. The Cold War continues, and that's the reason why when the Soviet Union fell, what was the place of the United States after that in the world, in the center states of the world, now that they are the sole superpower by 1991, 1992?
Oldest,
And I implore
oldest
you.
time is the self. David versus Goliath. Look at the size comparison.
I don't know where I put the book, but in order to get a little bit more info on that, I would read Scott Horton's highly cited book, Provoked, which will actually tell you that it will gather you the intel you need of why the Cold War never ended. And then I would read Legacy of Ashes by
The
what's
history of
his
the
name? Tim Weiner.
CIA.
Yeah, by Tim Weiner.
No
Weiner,
relation to
actually.
Michael Weiner. I mean,
I think it's Weiner. But whatever. But that's another good book as well, because it tells you a lot of the secrets of why the CIA was created, for what purpose, and what they do in the shadows, and that they have been, always have been, will always be. They're just now finally out in the open, kind of operating on United States soil, which technically they cannot, according to constitutional law.
What are you talking about? They came after the Constitution. They can interpret whatever they want. That's what the lawyers are there for. They can interpret the sky. They can interpret the sky is filled with fish.
Show that shirt
The
there,
law.
Andrew.
Vote. You are a slave.
Yeah, Constitution of no authority. The Constitution died upon the decadence of all those who signed it. It's contract. No contract is legitimate. It's literally unenforceable. Any contract. This is contract law in general. You cannot enforce a contract when those who signed it are dead.
Yep. We are all
And that's what
property of the
Lysander's.
District of Columbia.
And that is the reason why it was so easy at the end of the Civil War, and why the Civil War was fought by 1871 to reorganize the United States as a district corporate entity. That is why it is in capitals. That is the Reorganization Act of 1871. It changed the country forever into a operating business.
Yep.
Literally.
Just a second. I got the just a second. I think you got yours up. There you go. There you go. Go look it up yourself.
Wheeling Steel Corp versus Fox 298 US 19380 LED 114356 SCT 773. I believe that's Supreme Court, right? So this was a Supreme Court ruling. Therefore, the U.S. citizens of the District of Columbia residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. And that in itself is a ruling coincided with the set precedent of the Reorganization Act of 1871. When was this when was this ruling made? This was actually one of the early rulings, wasn't it? It was also a 14th Amendment ruling as well.
I had to type it in. That's just a picture, a screenshot I had.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second.
But together, if you want to look that up, Andrew, together, when we talk about this deep state, whether it's the United States, whether it's Great Britain, whether it's the rest of the world, whatever, however it's positioned, in my opinion, the deep state is no more or less than a shadow government of your government, but more of just a apparatus of certain alliances and partnerships between private entities in coordinates with public organizations, governments.
Argued March 9th and 10th, 1936, and decided May 18th in 1936.
Ooh. Wheeling Steel Corp versus which that's significant in itself because that would have been argued after the passing of the Social Security Act of 1936. And that actually gives you more, that in itself, that decision, now that you've said that, that actually kind of goes deeper into the establishment of why Social Security is law. That right there actually proves Social Security being constitutional at that point. If the courts rule that we are individual entities, property of the District of Columbia, so they can rob you as you work to pay for those through a pension program off of the backs of those who work to hold them as dependents to the state. As long as they have a worker, man, you will get your Social Security because the state loves you.
That's right.
You must
I'm a jobber.
You must depend on the state. You must depend on the state. They will protect you. They will serve you. They will service you. You will have yours at the end of your working life. However long your end of working life lasts, you will get yours.
As long as the conditions and terms are consistent, which they never are.
Which basically means that if you've never really paid into it, or you're able to exempt yourself out, like say you're a business owner or a 1099 self-proprietor, and you're able to hit certain exemptions to where you're not really paying into that Social Security, well, then they actually could theoretically use that against you. Although there are plenty of people that were self-employed that never actually paid into Social Security because of those exemptions, or those specifically in loss margin exemptions per expenses that are actually to this day reached the age of Social Security have been able to apply, and they're gaining access to Social Security, which in itself proves that you don't pay into Social Security as a fund for yourself, you dumb fucks.
Damn jobbers.
So with that, and I'm gonna go on a tirade on Social Security. I'm gonna rip this shred apart, you libertarians that think it's a Ponzi scheme. How can something be a Ponzi scheme if if the return is inevitable? There's no initial investment. You are forced to pay into it, and you are paying for those that are before you as you work, and you're always going to get it so long as you reach that age and the government still exists.
Well, it's because they will it into existence. It's not actually, foundational. It's not. It's astroturf.
I just want to let's dive into this actually as we close out. Speaking of Social Security, because this is a deep state matter actually. To your opinion, what do you think? What do you contrive Social Security is? Wealth distribution or an investment Ponzi scheme?
Well, I feel like they pitched it as an idea to try to, handle the Great Depression, right? And they just kind of, because when you have a war like we did with World War II, the whole thing is just a big
World War
giant. Well, can I finish my point? Any world
Yeah, go
war
ahead.
is a gigantic struggle session to put everybody on the same page and forget the past, because it's already, there's no reason to argue about the semantics of a situation. We're moving forward. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. So World War
Did you
One,
know
World
that-
War II,
Yeah. Go ahead, finish.
the politicians they game this out. They see what they can push. They push the buttons with the levers they have and see what they can get away with.
And just as a clever little drop here, the first recipient of Social Security who was able to receive it by, I believe, 1941. Social Security was not in existence until 1936. She reached the age of 65 by 1941. By the time she passed in, I believe, the mid 60s, obviously there's not a whole large gap to effectively pay as much as she received by the end of her life. But by the time she passed away in the mid 60s, I believe she had made approximately close to $50,000. She had a 5-year gap there. Yeah. So how did she earn that?
It's a Ponzi scheme.
It's who's investing?
Nobody's investing, but like I said, it's like an inverse. Is once you're all on the same page, it doesn't matter.
You have to have
You're
investment.
You're gonna draw the money first, and then you use credit as like an inverse investment.
It's because you're not investing anything, because it's insurance. The idea of Social Security is it's insured by the government. There is no investment. In order for an investment, Andrew, in order for an investment, you are investing. You are paying into a marketable strategy of value, awaiting for a return upon a higher value in the future.
The return,
you don't get a higher
is the
value.
revenue stream from all the war, the results of winning the war, and that's what they're always trying to draw more revenue streams by pitching more wars. And the money's soaked in blood. That's their investment. Blood is their investment.
Blood is the investment, but you're not understanding where I'm coming from. The idea of investment is a return on that value at a higher premium down the road.
That's the blue pill investment. That's not what the way the system.
But what I'm trying to tell you is there is no higher value in the end. You're going to get what you're going to get, regardless. You're going to have a return.
I know
that. In a Ponzi scheme, nobody gets a return. You're stolen from. The only person that gets the return is it's the person that set up the
I know.
scheme in general that actually makes
I-
money off of the poor saps that
I
actually
understand how
invested.
a traditional Ponzi scheme works. I mean, it was named after the guy that created it,
Well,
right?
yeah, it was. It was
But-
named after Charles Ponzi, I
Yeah.
believe was his name.
This is a government program. They're always corrupt. They're always designed to mess with you and make you argue these small semantics while they're sitting there running to the bank with all the money that they stole from the people that are currently living, and the people that are going to come after them and after them. They
What
just
it
kill
is-
the population. They kill the population, and then after the war or whatever it is over, they charge the people that they invaded or were at war with, in order to keep the coffers up and keep the charade going. That's what I'm talking about when I say it's a Ponzi scheme.
But if they're there to kill the population, then why haven't they nullified the boomers who are continuously growing as the new retirement age class for Social Security? I mean, we are at a peak where we have the largest population.
It's a balancing act. I mean, they've already
Well, why-
charged up the credit card, and they can only kill so much of the people that are younger than them now, because they're the ones that are paying all the bills.
Quit work, everybody. Quiet quit.
I'm not going to argue with that.
But again, though, I mean, you're going to get as so long as the law maintains itself, you're going to get the return on that value, which is absolutely nothing, by the way, because your dollar is fake. You're going to get that value of return at the same that you put into it at the very end, or actually less than what you put into it, because you're being robbed. It's more or less, it's not it's less of a Ponzi scheme and more of a socialist welfare redistribution scheme. You're playing off of the labor theory of value. Bullshit.
They drug the money to keep it stable, but it's still drugged, and it's still going to overdose.
You're overdosing on libertarian thought, dude. Get out of the basement.
I'm in the attic, thank you.
Oh, you know what they say about libertarianism, man, and Vladimir Lenin?
What? Please enlighten
Useful
me.
idiots. Useful idiots.
The last law on the books in the Soviet Union is don't be lazy.
Just don't be lazy. Yeah. And the problem is most people weren't lazy. They were just being eroded to nothing, to where they couldn't really work for themselves.
They were being
That's-
wore down by people who are afraid of change and taking risks.
Was that a slight at libertarians?
No, that was a slide at Enneagram number 6.
We have fun here. So but the moral of the story is, when it comes to the deep state, last thing, what exactly is it, Andrew? Going off of what Ian Carroll's little promo there, what exactly is the deep state?
Central control.
The state is the state, and it is inevitable, and the only way to get out of the state's control is to divorce yourself from the state and force it to compete. If you can force the state to compete, then you can wither its control. You're never going to get rid of it completely, but you can make it capitulate to the market factor. You can't do it alone.
If you make a
have to
pivot,
educate.
it takes a calculated risk, and there's always a trade-off at risk.
Mm-hmm. Agorism is the way, but you can't do agorism. You can do it personally for yourself, sure. But as a society and collateral towards the state apparatus that has expanded, you're going to have to wake up as many people as you can to understand that responsibility in yourself and in your family is the key. So you have to compete.
Yeah.
You have to force competition.
Yeah. I think I go compete for the bed.
I think I'm going to go compete for the bathroom. So with that, anything else to say, Andrew?
No. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been a very
nice
deep state
one.
episode.
This has been a very deep. You got us to debate, everybody. Like, subscribe, join the conversation down below, and add that comment. Share this with your friends, your family, and let's go to war, everybody, with the deep state, the world builders known as the Nazis. Live long and prosper.
Peace. Thanks for watching.
Where's that fucking exit?
I'm going to have to leave now, but I was sure I came in by that door over there. Hey, man, where's the door to get out of here?
Oh, it's right over there, sir.
Right over where?
The exit sign? Exit sign? It's that door right there.
That red sign?
Yeah, just go right that way.
Okay.
I think it went down the wrong door.
Where am I? Hey, what the fuck's wrong with you? That's not the right door.
Sir, you're gonna want to go to the one with the exit. You went to the door to the side there. That's
I went to the right doors. Where you pointed me to, you fuck.
I pointed you to the exit.
Man, you're fucking with the wrong guy.
I'm sorry.
You see this bulge on my hip? You know what that is?
That's a gun.
That's a Glock. You're fucking with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Don't ever send